we had a ghost in the apartment of a person who once lived in the apartment below. I'm sharing this story because it's really important to me. I'm also, I want it to still be fresh in my memory and still be able to share it. I should also say that I am a skeptic a lot of the time. I know that right now I believe in ghosts, but I didn't always believe in ghosts. For most of my life, I did not. And usually, even to this day, when someone tells me a ghost story, the first thing that pops in my head are logical reasons for what they could have seen or experienced. And that still happens. What made me start believing in ghosts? Well, I have a whole series about this, but basically the first thing was my first job ever when I worked at Disneyland, and that was back in 2009. The first restaurant I ever worked at Disneyland in California was the Golden Horseshoe restaurant in Frontierland. And that was, in my opinion, the most haunted place in the entire park. And if you want to hear all about my paranormal experiences at Disneyland or anything else related to being at Disneyland, the Golden Horseshoe, all that stuff, I have a series of videos, 3 videos that kind of discuss all of that. Years later, I would end up living in a haunted apartment. So let me kind of tell you how that happened. It was year 2020, and the pandemic had just started, and everything was in chaos, and I needed to move. And it just so happened that at that same time, my sister and brother-in-law had, my sister had gotten a promotion in her job, and so she needed to move towards Portland, Oregon. And we all lived in Southern California, so that's about 1,000 miles difference. And so she basically said, you can come stay with us for a while until you get back on your feet and, get your own place. And I said, sure. So we ended up moving into this apartment complex that she would end up becoming the assistant manager to. We had this 2-bedroom apartment, right? The thing was that right from the very beginning, we had strange experiences. I should probably also mention that I've lived in a lot of apartments and houses and various condos in my life. I've moved a lot. I'm used to that first night. It doesn't bother me, which is why that first night in the haunted apartment, nothing bothered me. It was fine. I would say a week later, that's when I started experiencing these nightmares. I would get nightmares of just, at first it was nondescript things happening, just strange and scary things in the nightmares would happen. But then, within the first couple weeks of living there would be a recurring character in the nightmares. It was a really tall person, probably, 6.5, maybe 7 feet tall. And they were dressed in a suit, all black, no white, no other colors, all black. Anything that was exposed, of their skin was in shadow. It was just very dark, all black. And this figure would appear in my nightmares. And my nightmares would usually make me wake up, and I'd wake up and it would be, 3:33 in the morning. After a month or 2, I don't remember how long it was, that figure would no longer be confined to the nightmares. We would start to see it in the apartment. I say we because I remember the first time I approached my brother-in-law about the nightmares. It was several months after we moved in. The nightmares have been going strong almost every night. But anyway, I was very sleepy. I remember my brother-in-law just going, are you all right? You look very tired. And I told him, yeah, I keep having these nightmares. And he kind of looked at me like, like what? And I told him, I said, this is making me sound crazy. I'm like, but I keep seeing this all black figure in my nightmares. And sometimes, he will attack, so I had a nightmare. I told him about a nightmare that I had where I walked out into the hallway looked into the living room, because the living room was dark. It was nighttime, and apparently we had all been in our bedrooms, but I came out into the hallway, looked through the hallway at the living room, and the black figure was there, silhouetted against the light that was coming in from the window. So I told him about that dream. He's like, I've been having nightmares like that too. He's like, they're different, but he's like, that figure, that all black, and he's like, and they're wearing a suit, right? I'm like, yeah, he's wearing a suit in the dream. Yeah, we both had the same kind of nightmares about the same figure. And that kind of validated what I was going through, because, you know, when you tell someone that you're having recurring nightmares of a figure in all black, you start to sound a bit crazy. It then transgressed into real life, starting to see the figure. We would be, you know, turning off all the lights. You know, they would go to their room, I would go to my room. Their room was on one side of the apartment, mine was on the other side of the apartment. And so I would be usually the last person awake at night. I'm always kind of a night owl. And I would turn off all the lights. I'd start heading down the hallway towards my room. And I would feel like there was someone there watching me. And so anyway, I turned around and I looked into the living room, and there was a figure standing in the corner, not against the window silhouetted like in my nightmares, but standing in the corner. And I remember just being locked on it like that. And I knew, I said, I'm going to keep my eyes on it, because if that's like a lamp or something that I'm not remembering, if that's a lamp or something that's in the darkness, I'm going to keep my eyes on it while I flick the light switch on so I can see what it is. I turn on the light switch, and there's nothing there. I never blinked. I never saw. I turn on the light switch, it's gone. And then I kind of stood there for a moment, and I'm like, okay, maybe it was just a play of shadows. You know, it was just a very particularly dark spot. Turn off the light. Nope. The figure wasn't there. It was darkness, once again, but the figure wasn't there. And so I kept it to myself. It became a nightly thing where I would feel like I wasn't alone. But every night I dreaded turning off the lights and going to my room, because in some way, shape, or form, I'd feel like either the figure was there or I would actually see it. And there was another time where I turned off the lights and I turned around and I saw that the figure was seated in the couch, like on the couch. There was something very off about it, because you could not see the face. You could not see the hands. It was all in shadow, and the suit was all black and also in shadow, so it was difficult. And so I would always retreat to my room and stay in there. But every night I woke up sometime at 3 a.m, every single night. Now I'll take a moment to pause from talking about that figure and talk about something else that happened in that apartment. Once in a while, I would be heading to my room, and I would be getting ready to open the door to my room and walk in. And I would see that it looked like there was a cat by my feet waiting to enter the room. I would open the door to my room, and I would see, like, in the corner of my eye, the cat run in, and the cat would disappear before I could even focus my eyes on it. But then it would happen more regularly. It would become a thing where probably around like once every 2 days I would see it. But one day, something kind of extraordinary happened. So occasionally my brother-in-law, he would knock on my bedroom door, because I would be working on a YouTube video on my computer. And we were in the middle of conversation, and he went, you know, he stopped talking and he went like that. And then he just like kind of stood there with his eyes open, and then he just like blinked and he like started talking again. But I went, hold on. I'm like, you just saw a cat, didn't you? And he looked at me and goes, yes, I just saw a cat. He's like, this is the second time. And I told him, I said, yeah. I was like so relieved that he saw it too. I was so relieved because I truly thought I was going insane. And the fact that he saw it too. So that was the first time I felt kind of validated. Now, a while later, continuing to see on occasion the tall, dark figure. One day I'm sitting at my computer just like this and I'm working on a video and it's late at night and I'm tired. And so what I do is I kind of lean back in my chair. My chair can swivel back. I lean back in my chair and at the corner of my eye, I see something standing next to me like a person. And I lean back and I look and there is someone's torso there. There's, stomach. I can see the belt, the shirt tucked into the belt. It's all black. And I realized then, I'm like, okay, there is someone standing next to me. And I look, and I would say exactly 1 second, not a blink of an eye, not several seconds, just exactly 1 second. I looked, it was there, and then it faded into nothing and it was gone. So I walked out into the living room because I knew my brother-in-law was awake and I'm like, I have to tell him. So I sat down on the couch and I told him, I said, do you see anything weird happening in the house besides the ghost cat? And he's just like, yeah, I do. And so I told him immediately, I'm like, I just saw someone was standing next to me. I looked right at them for a solid second before they disappeared. And I said, and they were wearing all black. And that's when I kind of segued into all black figure that we were seeing in our nightmares. And so he was like, you know what? He's like, I didn't want to say anything. He goes, but I've been seeing that figure too. He and I looked at each other. We're like, someone probably died in this apartment and we're probably seeing that. So the thing is, my sister was the assistant manager of that apartment complex. So I knew I could ask her. And I told her, I finally told her, I said, look, me and your husband have been seeing all this weird stuff happening around the apartment. We knew that she wasn't seeing much of anything. She occasionally admitted that she would feel like she was being watched, but she never actually saw anything. But she did have strange nightmares when we first moved in, like the first week or two. She said that she had nightmares, not necessarily of a figure, but she had nightmares, and it was really strange because she never really had nightmares. But anyway, I told her, I said, did anybody die in the apartment before we moved in, or any time before that? She comes back, she says, no one died in this apartment. As far as the records go back, no one ever in that apartment died. So I thought, well, what could it be, So we had these downstairs neighbors, and then they moved in several months after we moved in. So we had an empty apartment downstairs, and it was, it was kind of nice because there was no noise or anything like that. But it was a small family. They moved in, and I started noticing that in the middle of the night, the kids would scream. You'd hear them from their room. Their room was beneath my sister and brother-in-law's room because it's an identical apartment on the lower level. And in the middle of the night, you hear the kids screaming bloody murder. And then you could hear the kids running across the floor and then enter the parents' room, which was beneath my room. And you could hear them and they'd all settle down and be quiet and whatever. And that happened maybe once every week or two. But then in between that, in the middle of the day, you would hear the kids playing, and then all of a sudden, like, they'd stop playing, and then you'd hear them running around the apartment and like slamming doors, and they'd be quiet for like a long time after before you'd hear them like come back out and start playing again. It occurred to me that maybe they were also seeing the ghost too. I went back to my sister and I said, did someone die in the apartment below? She goes, She goes, well, it was vacant for a long time. So she goes, I'll check. So She comes back later that night. She goes, so it turns out, she goes, there was a person who was living in the apartment below us prior to us moving in. And then 3 weeks or so, 3 weeks or so before we moved in, that person, and I have to be careful because YouTube will, do something to this video if I say the wrong words, but this person had basically taken their own life. And this person was not that old. They were probably as old as I am now, which I'm in my early 30s. She didn't tell me their name, but I know the address of the apartment below me, and I knew the age of the person. I knew the person that she described, so I Googled it, because she couldn't tell me the person's name because it would kind of violate privacy, and she's very a stickler for privacy. And I did find there was a real person. And this is the God's honest truth. There was a real person who lived in that apartment who did, end it very abruptly. And it is really sad because I skimmed through their Facebook, their Twitter. I was kind of learning more about this person. I wanted to know. And, it was a man. And I saw a picture, several pictures of them actually. I can't describe how I felt. Because this person in those pictures was about 7 feet tall. And his job required him to wear a suit all the time. All the time. That was his job. He was a very professional person. But according to the posts and everything, he was the nicest person ever. The nicest guy. Everybody loved him. Everybody missed him. And he was like the kind of person that lit up a room, when he entered the room. So I shared all this information, with my brother-in-law, and he goes, oh my God, that picture. He's like, that's the guy. We had a ghost in the apartment of a person who once lived in the apartment below. Remember I said that the figure we saw didn't immediately manifest itself as a person. It started off as just nightmares, random nightmares, not even a figure in the nightmares, just nightmares. And then later it became a figure in the nightmares, and then weeks later it became a person in the apartment. The thought did briefly cross our minds that maybe we could contact the family of the person. We didn't do it. We didn't contact the family, and we still won't do it because it wouldn't be right. So we lived like that with a ghost in the apartment. And but now I'm going to share with you another weird thing that happened in the apartment. So, like I said, I was a night owl, and I was hanging out with my friend on Discord. Discord's an online thing where you can like hang out with people, have a video chat, that kind of thing. And my friend wanted to play this game where you kind of like explore Titanic virtually. And he's like, hey, I want to record this and put it up on my YouTube channel. And he goes, I want you to be there so you can kind of like co-host it with me and we can just chat and whatever. I'm like, okay, cool. Sounds fun. So we go and do that. And we get through like a whole like hour and a half maybe of the whole thing. It was fun. We talked the whole time. Anyway, a couple days later, my friend messages me and he says, was there someone in the room with you when we recorded that? And I said, no, why? So he goes, that's weird. And I said, why? What's weird? He goes, there was a voice in the recording. And I said, what? He goes, yeah, the voice of a woman. And I was like, what is this? So he shared with me a clip that he cut out of it. And I will share that clip with you now. It'll be replayed for you guys 3 times. But basically, you will hear me in the middle of a conversation with my friend. We're just laughing about something. And so it happens right between when he says, yeah, and then I say, haha, the peasant, right? And right in between that, you hear someone say something, and I don't know what they're saying. Maybe you can figure it out for us.
Yeah.
The peasant.
Yeah.
The peasant.
Yeah.
The peasant. So, as you heard, there was a woman's voice there. And I made my friend swear up and down that he did not fake that. And he was like, no. He's like, I swear. And by now it's been like 2 years since that happened. And he still swears, you know, that that was raw, basically unedited, you know. It doesn't even sound like it's English, you know, so I have no idea. But if someone recognizes what it's saying and knows what it's saying, please tell me. I'm really curious. So yeah, that was something that was very, very freaky. But eventually, what ended up happening was I was finally able to financially get on my feet. I got my own studio apartment, which I moved into. And I would say a month after living at my new studio apartment was not haunted, by the way. It was very nice, very peaceful. But new studio apartment, a month after living in that apartment, finally, I'm having dinner with my sister and brother-in-law. And, you know, my brother-in-law ends up saying, oh, you know, by the way, your sister finally saw it. I'm like, wait, what? And I'm like, what are you talking about? And he goes, yeah, she saw the figure, the guy. And so she was kind of like bashful, but she was just kind of like, yeah, I saw it. And I'm like, what happened? And this is the story, at least as I remember it, because she did tell me a long time ago, but this is the story as I remember it. She was in her kitchen late at night. She was cleaning up after dinner. And she was putting something in the oven. I think she was like storing some stuff in the oven. And as she was closing the oven door, in her peripheral vision, she saw a person all dressed up walking down the hallway. And then the vision was cut off because the hallway is blocked. The view is blocked by another wall. So she saw someone heading towards the hallway, and then they kind of passed out of view. And she stood up and she looked over because she thought, oh, that's weird. Like, what is my husband doing all dressed up this late at night? Like, she thought he was asleep. And so she looked in the living room because, you know, hallway's there. She looks in the living room and he's asleep on the couch. So she says that she immediately walked into the hallway to go see like who that was. And she saw the figure walk through the door into my old room. And she was like, okay, yeah. She was like, no, I'm done. So she saw it. She saw the figure. And I think that was the only time she ever saw the figure. But the final experience I had in that apartment, the very last one, just before they moved out, was they needed to go somewhere and they needed me to watch their dog. They had, you know, towards the last year or two of living in that apartment, they ended up getting a dog. And I'm there, it's nighttime, and the dog is in the hallway, like looking around. It's seeing something, but I go into the hallway and there is something flying around towards the ceiling. And at first, I'm like, I thought it was a bug. I thought it was like a little blue firefly. And this one was so tiny and blue, and it wasn't a fly, and it was leaving kind of like a slight light trail behind it. I didn't know what to think of it, and the dog started, you know, like growling and barking at it. And then finally, the thing went to the top, like just above the doorway of my sister's bedroom. And it kind of just hovered there for a second. And then it started glowing really brightly. And the dog like jumped up at the door, because the door to the room is shut. She jumped up at the door and was like barking at it, you know. And then the thing like blinked out and disappeared. And the dog was just kind of like looking around like, oh, what happened? You know, like the dog had no idea like why that thing disappeared. And I like was just in shock. But yeah, it was really, really strange. And eventually I moved out of that studio apartment and into my own, another apartment. So I'm in the second apartment. This apartment's not haunted either. They moved out of the haunted apartment and into a much larger apartment several buildings away. Now, some people might start asking me, like, what was this ghost? Was it trying to get us out of there? Was it trying to scare us? And, you know, was it malevolent and all that? And I don't think so. I don't think any of those things. When I did my research, I felt like they were standing behind me when that happened. And I think really all it was this unfortunate man was in the first few weeks so confused about what happened to him. And you're wondering what in the world is happening. So you're confused, you're angry, you're trying to get attention. You want to find out what's going on. And so I think in those first few weeks of the nightmares and stuff, we were feeling what he was feeling. Just scared and confused. And then when he finally manifested himself, that might have been, you know, my grandmother, when I was a kid, she used to say, you know, if you ever come across a ghost or a demon or whatever, because she was an ordained minister, but she would say, if you ever come across a ghost or a demon, you know, don't give them attention, because if you give them attention, that feeds them. I never understood what that meant until I lived in the apartment. I don't think it necessarily means that they feed off of it. I think what it is like, imagine you're invisible, right? You suddenly go invisible and you're scared, you're freaked out. You're trying to get people's attention and nobody's paying attention to you. Nobody sees you, nobody hears you, nobody feels your presence. And then all of a sudden somebody does. Somebody does see you. Somebody does hear you and they can feel your presence. Would you not be suddenly ignoring everybody else and going to that person and going, hey, you see me, right? You know I'm here. Like, do something, you know? I think that's what was going on. I think the guy was just trying to get our attention. But there is nothing that could convince me that apartment was not haunted. I can't prove to you that the things that we experienced were real, and I don't expect you to believe me. I don't. You know, this channel is not about paranormal, it's about history. So this is just another weird story I felt like I wanted to share with everybody. But anyway, thank you guys all for watching, and yeah, be sure to comment below your thoughts and, you know, give the video a like if you must, you know. But anyway, thank you all for listening. See you all next time. Bye-bye.